What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're here with Dr. Obedele Kambon, and he's out in Ghana. Now, this brother definitely went to school here. He's a Morehouse man, but he ended up leaving America to go to Ghana, and we'd like to hear his story. So, Doctor, thanks for joining the show today.
All right, thank you too. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. So we just, first of all, let's ask a question. How is it in Ghana right now with all this, coronavirus situation? Because I know they have done some measures themselves.
Yeah, last check, there were 24 who had it. And, as far as that, there was one person who had already had some type of pulmonary disorders, and that one person passed. I'm sure that there are updates every single day. There are new updates as far as that goes. But yeah, that's really the situation. I work at the University of Ghana, and University of Ghana is shut down right now. All the students have gone home, so we're now taking measures in order to continue the rest of the semester online. So yeah, things are very different. We drove through the campus just briefly, and my daughter started counting people like, okay, 1, 2, 3, because it's really like a ghost town. And this time of year, it's tens of thousands of students there, so it would really be bustling. So you can really feel the difference as far as that goes. A couple of people who were here went back to the States, and then others, left the States in order to come here. So people are kind of tucking into their nests and getting comfortable wherever it is that they want to weather this storm as far as, the coronavirus.
So the people that originally brought it in, who brought it into Ghana originally? Do they know?
Yeah, there was one national from Turkey and then another one from Norway. So, I guess that's what happens when you let turkeys into your household. But yeah, that was a situation. So it was foreigners who came, and then after that, there were a couple of others. But mainly, it was, foreigners who came, who brought it in. So it's really a tough situation as far as that goes right now.
So it looks like not only the United States, but even the continent of African nations, right? It looks like people are going to have to start doing health screenings for people being allowed into the country. I mean, if I was in leadership, that's what I would do. Say, look, in order for you to obtain a visa, you need to have a health screening sent in to us, and then we can verify this health screening, whatever doctor or company that's going to get involved with that. And then even, I believe, when you get to the airport, even with the health screening, you need to be checked for a fever. I mean, do you agree with maybe they should start going to that route?
Yeah, as far as that goes, Ghana actually shut all the borders Sunday night at midnight. So that's, they've really taken it to about as stringent measures as you can get. Nobody leaving, nobody coming, which was interesting because, one of my aunties was in Rwanda briefly. She planned on coming back on the 16th. But yeah, she is not able to come in because of this. Another sister who I knew based out of Atlanta, she also was not able to come. So someone was saying, oh, maybe she could check Ethiopian Airlines. But, as far as that goes now, that's even a non-factor because, when you shut the borders, that's pretty much a done deal until they decide to open them back up.
Yeah, I know Trump had, went that route too. This is my only issue with that. Like, listen, if you say nobody can come in, I'm with you. But when you say that nobody can leave out, like, how are you protecting your country by stopping people from leaving out? I'm just trying to figure that part out, because when you land an airplane, they don't even have to even go into the airport if they don't want to. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I don't know that situation that you can't leave out. That kind of bothers me a little bit. But, outside of all that, I hope everybody is doing, definitely good in Ghana. And I guess practicing their social distancing, which we both know that's going to be extremely hard for African culture, is social distancing.
Yeah. Interestingly, before a lot of it got locked down, I attended a wedding maybe about 3 weeks ago. One of my graduate students was getting married. And, marriage, everybody shakes hands. It's supposed to, there are all these types of things that go on. But one of the things, they had a doctor come at the beginning and make an announcement about social distancing. just wave, don't shake hands, all these things. So it's really, a very different situation as far as, Ghana goes, when you're still trying to practice various things like weddings and, funerals and things that just would go on normally, but now you're having to do that with these new measures in place. In terms of leaving out of the country, I think that's more geared towards trying to make sure that you're protecting others, if you have it in. But, I would definitely say if that was something that China did early on, maybe a lot more people would be a lot better off, if they had shut down the borders as far as that goes. So once you have it in, you quarantine the people. But what I see is various countries are trying to tackle it in different ways because it's really a novel situation. Some are trying to just think about best practices. Not only, do you have the responsibility to protect the citizens of your country, and if Ghana would have locked down the borders before, the Norwegian and the Turkish guy came in, it never would have got here. But yeah, I think that's basically the situation. Now, one of my friends who was here, she was bragging. She was like, see, we ain't got it. Oh, y'all folks got it. So she was based out of the US, but she was here. But then the very next day, that's when those first 2 cases were announced. So she was like, Dad got me. But yeah, everybody's trying to just, do the best they can with this.
Yeah, brother. I definitely, hear you on that. Like I said, we all just, hopefully, because, we know even Ghana, a lot of tourism happened in Ghana with the year of return. And a lot of African nations are losing money right now due to this with tourism. And Trump, he says he wants to get the country back to work by Easter. And I do understand why he's saying that. Just on a business level, I understand why. I know people may not, they say, oh, he's crazy, but you can't really have your country shut down too long before your country go to hell, really. But but let's talk about outside of that, and I hope you guys be okay, because Africans have lived millions of years around each other, no different at their wedding, and never had nothing. But there's always something coming out of Europe or Asia or somewhere. You used to study things historically, but you had graduated Morehouse, and that's a great accomplishment. A lot of brothers like going to Morehouse. What made you say, what, I'm going to make my life on the African continent? What made you do that?
Yeah, so there was probably a good decade or so, from my attending Morehouse to my deciding to repatriate. And, once I finished Morehouse, I graduated magna cum laude. I went to grad school for African languages and literature, and then also for linguistics. And that was at University of Wisconsin-Madison, of all places. Now, I'll tell you, Wisconsin is probably the last place I thought I would ever go to because it's very white in terms of snow, and then also in terms of population there. But, that's where they had that graduate program. At that time, the only PhD program in African languages and literature, which is, that's very telling that that's where they would put that program at. So, there was that. Then I started teaching in Chicago, and I had an incident in Chicago that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was basically a trumped up gun charge. Now, the draconian gun laws that exist, so you don't have to worry about that in Texas so much, but as they existed in Chicago, they were eventually struck down by the Supreme Court. But I had, we used to do survival training, and we would protect the campsite for the youth. So coming back from one of those encampments, as we would call them, the police stopped that car and decided to go into the trunk. Now, rather than saying it was in the trunk, so I had a firearm, right? And rather than saying it was in the trunk, the police decided to say it was underneath my seat and it was loaded. Now, fortunately, I had an eyewitness who, was our surprise witness who we came to testify, and basically destroyed the police's whole case by, they said that they never went into the trunk, but turns out that they left the key for the police car. So we presented that key and said, if you didn't go into the trunk, then where did we get this police car key? So it's really something, even as I say this, it sounds like something out of the movies, but long story short, we were able to, beat that case. And as I was sitting on the witness stand, I made the decision that never again will I allow myself to be under the jurisdiction of these white folks, where just on a whim they go on a fishing trip through your car and decide, whether to trump up something on you, or if you ain't got nothing, want to decide to plant something. So I had already lived in Ghana for a year when I was doing my junior year at Morehouse. So I was just like, you know what, I'm out. They didn't ask. At that time, I had 2 master's degrees. I had gotten all of my coursework for my PhD done. I was teaching at Chicago State University, Malcolm X College. I was just all these different schools in the Chicago area. But of course, white police don't ask you, oh, are you an upstanding member of society? They just say, we're going to trump up something on you. So that was really the breaking point where I said, you know what, I'm going back to Africa. And rather than financing my enemies and enriching my enemies, let me, work from this side to build up Africa, to make Africa great again.
So let me ask you a question. How do Black Americans finance and enrich white supremacy? How do they do that?
Right. The first way, and this is actually intentional, is that, growing up, we didn't call ourselves any type of Americans. We called ourselves Black. But somewhere around 1988, Jesse Jackson and other leaders endorsed using this term African American. And, according to Nana Malcolm X, he would say, if you're an American, you wouldn't catch no hell. And basically, if you look at the information from Dr. Michelle Alexander, she talks about how there are more Black people in prison now than were enslaved at the start of the US Civil War. And that really tells you something, because I actually wrote an article on this, and this is about, how the 13th Amendment, and Ava DuVernay, maybe about a year or 2 after that article, came out with 13th, the documentary, about how the 13th Amendment to the Constitution actually doesn't abolish enslavement, it reinforces it, and it says that slavery shall not exist within the United States except where the party has been convicted of a crime. So that means all you have to do is criminalize the race, and that's exactly what they did. So as soon as it's time to pick the cotton, guess what? There's a crime wave, right? All of you all are loitering. As soon as it's time to drain the swamps or lay some railroad tracks, guess what? Everybody has to go get arrested. So this was a very intentional thing. But in terms of how we finance our enemies, basically every single thing that we do there is financing our enemies. So if you're paying your mortgage, that that money is going to go somewhere. It's going to find its way, especially tax dollars, to build the prisons that we complain about, to buy the bullets that we're getting shot down in the streets with. So all of these things, we have to think about the degree to which we actually finance that. And I remember I was just talking to a colleague of mine. He was saying with the Million Man March, which I attended, 95, I was about 16 years old when that happened. And he said that he was down in the subway there, and somebody came up to him, like an Italian guy, was like, wow, I sold out all of my stuff. Are y'all gonna do this every year? So, white folks are like, the hotel money, the travel money, just all these things, are going straight into the hands of the exact same white folks who we complain about are imprisoning us and shooting us and all these other things. So, basically it comes down to how do we not finance them, as long as we are staying there. And, more or less, I give the analogy of, it's like if you're living with an armed robber, and he's an armed robber, but every so often he breaks you off with a couple bills, so you don't say nothing. As a matter of fact, you kind of shine up his tool when he's not using it, make sure it's well oiled, and then send him out, to the night. So this is kind of us as Black people, that we know that this is, the kidnapper who brought us there in the first place, but then throughout the world, this exact same guy is going around strong arming, robbing, mafioso moves on all these different countries, and we're assisting in that through us, working for, for the army, the military side, but then even the things that seem more innocuous on the civilian side are doing nothing but continue to enrich that exact same enemy.
Yes, sir. So let me ask you a question. So you got to Ghana, you're living there now. How's your level of stress since you've been in Ghana versus the U.S.?
Very good. This is an excellent question, and it's something that I thought about one time when I was driving, and I realized that I wasn't looking for is a police car around, every other corner, because like I was raised in North Carolina, outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, And, you know, very often I would go up to either DC or New York, which is where my father's side of the family was. And especially when you get to Virginia, the whole state of Virginia is basically like a speed trap. So, you know, every other mile, you got this little indentation in the, you know, this barrier in between. And that's where the police just kind of set up shop. And, you know, you gotta, once they catch you, you know, all right, you're going 66 and a 65, you're going 64, and it's like, they don't even care. But I realized here that I was like, you know what, I'm not looking for the police. And it was just something that really brought home that there's not that level of stress that you have. Or when you're in the States and like a police car is behind you, how your heart just kind of jumps for a second. And I realized that one time there was a police car behind me that had its lights on. And I knew the police car, like here, they don't stop you for tickets. Like they'll just go right around you. So if they got the lights on, it's because they're trying to get through traffic to go where they're going. So I realized that my heart didn't jump. And that's when I was like, you know, this is a different situation just in terms of freedom of fear, quality of life, things like that. And in another situation, we were at a festival at the Botanical Gardens at Accra. And I had my son in my arms, and I realized, I was like, you know what? I don't have to worry about somebody shooting, especially the police, but anybody shooting my son just for holding a toy gun or something like this. You know, that's a reference to Tamir Rice, who was shot. So, you know, it's just a different level of security, you know, and lack of all of those types of stresses, to the point that it's actually tangible, and you don't really think about it until you realize I'm not thinking about the things I was thinking about before. And there was another brother who had also repatriated who went to Morehouse with me. And he said he was walking around the store one day and he realized that nobody was following behind him, because how you gonna follow behind somebody because they're black, because everybody's black, right? And he said something that I thought was very interesting. I don't know if I'll phrase it this way, but he said, this is, and he's actually out of Texas as well, but he said, this is what it must feel like to be a white man in the US. And I asked him what he meant by it. And he was, you know, just basically like, white folks aren't thinking about, am I white? Is somebody doing something to me because I'm white, blah, blah, blah. They just go into the store, they get their stuff, they go home, they just, you know, kind of live it. And that's when he was here, that was the first time he actually just felt like he's just living and he's not thinking about some of these things that are basically an everyday thing. And it's not really until you leave the US that you realize that these things that have kind of become normal for us are so abnormal. They're common, but they're very abnormal for anyone to be thinking about just, you know, going through their daily lives.
Yeah, I can agree with that, brother, because the first time I went to the continent, you know, it was Ethiopia, and that thought came to my mind. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not worried about the police. I'm seeing people laughing and talking with the police, actually. You know, you're not looking like, man, is he gonna stop, or he gonna do this, or man, he's standing there, what are you gonna do? You're not even thinking like that at all. And I had the same thought. Say, yeah, this is how white folks feel in America. They don't worry about nothing. They just be. See, the thing is, in African nations, we actually can be a human being. In America, you're black, or you whatever they want to call you that day. You know what I'm saying?
Or whatever.
And yeah, and that removes, like I say, a lot of stress. And just like I even tell black folks, you know, when they talk about building certain things up in this country, and I say, listen, these folks are never going to allow black people to really build up like even we did in the past. I said, if we're going to build, we're going to have to do that on the African continent. Like, you want to rebuild Black Wall Street? Well, shoot, pick an African nation, go build it there. I say they would love to have you, because you're trying to contribute, you're trying to bring in jobs, businesses, you're trying to build up the place. So why wouldn't they want to have you there? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, I definitely concur with that. And this is my son, Kweku, who's coming into the shot real quick. Kweku, call. So this is the one who I was saying that, you know, I have to worry about some of these things that, you know, you think about in the US. And, you know, just the way that he has his kind of carefree life, running around. We went out to where we have some land at Supremacy, and he was just running up and down the hill, and just enjoying himself. And it's just something to be able to give that to your children. And it's really something that's priceless that you really can't pay for. But yeah, just in terms of that, I know quite a few initiatives where, you know, like basically in my own situation, I was installed. So I was made a traditional ruler here in Ghana. And, you know, it's a very amazing way to basically be accepted and almost adopted into a family, because, you know, you'll get a stool name and, you know, access to land and all these things. And, you know, it's something that when we look at the US, if you look at race riots, if you look at, you know, after Reconstruction, the Hayes-Tilden Compromise and all these things, and, you know, the mass lynching of Black people, is really something that we've gotten a lot of precedent in terms of how welcome we are there in actuality. So if we look at Rosewood, if we look at Tulsa, if we look at Wilmington, if we look at all these places, then, you know, this tells us that why do we keep trying to help these white folks? Because that's essentially what we're doing. Because even when we have like a mini enclave, that enclave is still within the context of this very white nation. So like I gave the analogy of, you know, it's sort of like if you have a pool warmer. So here you have a swimming pool and you have like a little warmer. What it does, it sucks the water out, you know, briefly, rolls it around, and then it puts it right back into the swimming pool. It's just warmer now, right? And that's what we're doing with all of these different initiatives when we're doing it there. We're taking the money out very briefly, but then it stays right back into the context of that system, as opposed to draining that pool, like getting it completely, get it out of there in order to, you know, enrich our side of things, you know. So I think that that's something that we can definitely see, and I can give so many case studies of people who have repatriated. And, you know, that's actually why I started an initiative called repatriatetogghana.com. And that's basically because you have so many people who try to repatriate, but they really don't know the language. Like for me, I teach Ghanaians the major language of Ghana, which is Chi, right? And that was my goal in even learning the language in the first place. I said, I want to learn it well enough to be able to teach Ghanaians, native speakers, the language. So like for somebody who doesn't know the language, they're coming in, but, you know, it's not as smooth a transition as it would be if they have somebody who knows the language, knows the lay of the land, has contacts in very high places. So very recently, you know, through initiatives that started right there, African Studies, in 2016, 34 of us got citizenship. And then from a continuation of that initiative, just recently, over 120 other Africans got citizenship from the diaspora, from the US, from the Caribbean, so forth and so on. So these are the things that we can see that actually show that degree of reciprocity that we're looking for, that we don't get in the US.
Well, let me ask you a question, because some people say that, okay, brother, like I said, I would like to go, I even probably would like to be a citizen. But why does it take so long? Shouldn't that, since we were stolen from, you know, West Africa, and some of us did go through, you know, the castle and everything to get shipped off, shouldn't they, you know, of course, check your criminal background, make sure you're not a horrible, you know, individual, but shouldn't they speed up a process, or at least residency or citizenship? Why does it take so long?
Very good. Now, in our case, I won't go so much into the details, but it didn't actually take so long for the 2016 one. And essentially, it was something where we were having these meetings at the Institute of African Studies. And from those meetings, the executive secretary to the president came to the meeting, and we expressed just those same concerns to him. Now, he took that back to the sitting president at that time, President John Dramani Mahama. And, you know, from that, so this is in April, I want to say. So that was also the election year. President Mahama was not reelected. And in December of that year is when we got that citizenship. So from that process, let's say it started in April and then it ended in December. It wasn't quite so long, you know, a time as far as that goes. This time as well, it was also by presidential order. Now, one thing that we're working for, and matter of fact, this is a document that I'm working on right now, is a policy, right? So the Center for Migration Studies at the University of Ghana, which is where I work, they actually came out with a diaspora engagement policy. Now, unfortunately, because they're all Ghanaians who are writing that document, when they're thinking about diaspora, they're only thinking about Ghanaians who've lived outside and are coming back. So those of us from the actual diaspora were like, that's not going to cut it. You know, you can't have an entire document that's going to affect the lives of millions of people, and we don't have any input. So myself and several others were invited to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and we were invited to give input on that document. So we did give input, however, that input wasn't incorporated. Right now, from the Office of Diaspora Affairs, which is under the president, directly, they have instructed the Center for Migration Studies scholars in order to put in the suggestions that we made. And what we're looking for is to actually have a policy where a lot of the hurdles and hoops that you got to jump through are waived entirely. So then it's not up to the whim of a president to say, okay, I want to do this, or I think I can get points for this. So, political, anything that's going on, but it's actually a set policy that if you come back, one suggestion was, if you have a DNA test that shows you come from here, you shouldn't have to go through anything. But even beyond that, all of us from the diaspora, we didn't have to go through all these hoops and hurdles and processes to get shipped out. So it shouldn't be that same thing if we're trying to come back home. So that's something that we're actually actively working on right now. So the first one was under the NDC government. This past one was under the MPP government. And under the past one, in addition to the 120 others, my mother, my father, my sister, and my wife all got citizenship. And, as I mentioned, I got it in 2016. So we're seeing steps in the right direction, but ultimately it's really going to be up to policy and how that policy is speaking to our needs as Africans from the actual diaspora.
So let me ask you a question. If citizenship, it takes a little longer, what about permanent residency? Can you acquire that a lot faster than citizenship?
So with the citizenship, it was essentially a form that we filled out. So when you come in, they have what's called a tourist visa, and that's what most people come in on, unless you have a job or you have some type of organization, NGO, that's bringing you in. So you start off with that tourist visa, and then once you attach to any type of company, NGO, in my case, the university, that's where you get a residence permit. Right, so the residence permit, after you have the residence permit, then you can apply for the permanent residence. And then they also had what's called right to abode. So that was passed into law that you should have the right to live, do your business, things of that nature here. But ultimately, what we're looking for is the citizenship. As mentioned, it wasn't such a long time. If I go from April to December, in our case, it's not even a full year for us to get citizenship in that case. In this case, you have people who submitted their forms. Some who did it in 2016 with the year of return is where it actually came, where the others who had already applied got the citizenship. So it's not so long a process in my case and in the case of others. But yeah, it really depends on a number of factors. In terms of how long you stay on the tourist, visa, and you want to renew that, the degree to which you're able to attach yourself to an organization or anything that vouches for you, where you get the permanent residence. So, I know people who have been here for years and are still dealing with, those visas. But that's what we're ultimately trying to deal with and, work out, that it shouldn't be, multiple years. It should be just basically, like you said, after some of those background checks are done, because we also don't want any CIA agents up in here either. Yeah, once those background checks are done, it should basically be a rubber stamp, because none of us who have repatriated are here begging on the side of the road or looking for a handout. That when we're here, we're working at the universities, we're establishing businesses. I don't know anybody who's not doing something that's enriching the country, in some way, shape, or form. So it really should be, and that's what we put into the policy recommendations. It really should be a much easier process.
Yes, it is. For those who want to be in Ghana, and that's people that actually, definitely want to be in Ghana, like I say, more than others. And that's how I'm also, focusing that for those people. So, but the thing is, you got your citizenship. There's people in your family got citizenship. It's like I tell anybody. Anything worth having is going to take some hard work. You have to be more determined than anyone else, if that's what you, like I say, want to do, and you focus, on that particular goal. Like for me, in certain countries that I'm leaning toward, that maybe can work possibly for me in every area. So I definitely get that. Now, I said, we would definitely want to, ask you this question also. While you're there, you see kind of how, people are dealing with things with pre-existing conditions and all the issues with the coronavirus. Do you notice that the level of food and the way people eat in Ghana, is it a lot better than America? Because at least from my experiences, in African nations, they have a better quality of food, which affects the overall health.
Definitely. There is Food Sovereignty Ghana, which I want to give a shout out because they're at the forefront of fighting places like the US and others trying to bring in GMOs. And that's been an ongoing discussion. But like, for example, when we came from the mountains, which is just like 30-40 minute drive out from Accra, we got like all these mangoes, like, 9 or 10 mangoes for the equivalent of, let me see, like maybe about $4 or $5, right? So like, that's something that you cannot get in the US. You get all these pineapples. You can go anywhere and just get coconut water, which has, all types of electrolytes. The pineapples have bromelain, which is, also something that's very helpful in terms of fighting malaria even. So there are all these things just in terms of the food, the quality of the food that enriches your health, and then also the quality of life that you have. So these are things that when you're living in the US, a lot of what you're eating is processed foods, right? And when you are trying to eat organic and eat right, there's a place called Whole Foods. A friend of mine called it Whole Paycheck, because you go in there, you get one single bag, and that's about all you got for the month. But here, your money goes a whole lot further, and what you get for it is actually a whole lot more nutritious in terms of, the nutrients that come from the food. When people eat here, it's the foods that are being prepared are prepared from foods that are grown right here, right? So unless you are, and nowadays there are a lot of those US companies that are trying to come into Ghana and actually have come into Ghana. So now they got Burger King, they got Pizza Hut, they got, what's the other one? Just all these, chains, KFC, that's the other one. All these chains that are here now. And I remember back in the late 90s, that's when people, they had these like Ghanaian brands that were set up like fast food joints. So people were eating all this fried chicken and so forth and so on. So I was like, watch, in about 10 years, all these people are going to be health nuts, because once they start getting heart disease and, diabetes and all these things from the stuff that they're trying to eat now, then they're going to see diseases that they never have seen before. And you saw a spike in like fibroid tumors within the last decade or more, just all these different cancers, heart disease. Even my supervisor, he had to have major heart surgery, and that even delayed my finishing up my PhD. But a lot of that is due to how people eat. So just to make the correlation between diet and, your health, that people, it's kind of like novel, like to eat high on the hog, that if you have a certain class, quote unquote, status, then the idea is, oh, I can afford stuff that other people can't afford. But what you're eating now, in order to imitate some quote unquote Western lifestyle, is something that is going to bring diseases. So you see a close tie between the FDA and USDA, because one is there to give you the disease, and then the other one is there to bring you a cure for the symptoms, as Dead Prez says. So these are just things to keep in mind. And it's something that it's something that you can't even pay for in terms of the difference in quality of life.
Yeah, yes, sir. That's why I tell people all the time, from what I've just learned in my personal journey, is that basically the only way you can halfway be healthy in America is, going plant-based. I'm not talking about processed plant-based. That's how evil they are. They see people going plant-based, and then now they want to process that. Right. So you truly have to, be plant-based in order to even eat in the United States of America. Now, when I was over there, you can eat whatever. You don't feel bloated. You actually start losing weight. Right. But over here, if you're not plant-based and, you're just getting set up, that's why there's a lot of reasons why we need to start really, if coronavirus don't show you nothing else, and the way this government start acting, how clueless a lot of them are with situations like this. I don't know what else to tell you, but brother, tell people how to get to your website and anything that you have going on so they can go check it out.
Very good. So my personal website is my first name and last name, and I can spell that out for you. It's obedelekambon.com. That's OBADELEKAMBON.com, obedelekambon.com. So you can check me out there. We also have our own social education network. I quit Facebook around 2012. You know, that's even before the Facebook jail and everything started popping off, where they target Black people, right? But I kind of saw the writing on the wall then that we have to have our own spaces. And if we're going to have them, we're going to have to be the ones to create them. So that one is called Abibitumi, and that translates to Black Power. I'll spell that as well. ABIBITUMI, Abibitumi. And so that's abibitumi.com. We have the apps out there for Android and for iOS, so you can download those as well. And then finally, the one that I think, you know, because we're talking about Ghana, we're talking about repatriation, the main one is repatriatetoghana.com, repatriatetoghana.com, REPATRIATE, repatriate, TO2 Ghana, GHANA, repatriatetoghana.com. And that's for people who are interested in finding out, you know, when you think about moving to Africa, for a lot of people, it just seems like a fog and a mist. Like, I don't know people, like, how am I going to get a job? How am I going to support myself? Like, all these things, these are right in alignment with why we set that up, in order to assist people. Because we got so many people who come here, and, you know, there's an expression, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So because people don't really have an idea of how they can work, you know, without, you know, even entrepreneurship, creating their own opportunities, then they end up coming here. And then after 2-3 years, they on a flight back, you know, trying to drive Ubers until they come back. I actually know people who are doing that, trying to drive Ubers to get their money up to come back. And like all these things, I'm like thinking about the thousands that you spent on the tickets to go back and forth, as opposed to if you came with a solid plan. Like, I repatriated 12 years ago. I haven't set foot on US soil since then. And that's intentional. And the reason why is because I actually came with a solid plan of how I'm going to support myself. One thing that I do is I teach African languages online. And we have Chi classes. Chi is a major indigenous language of Ghana. That's starting on April 4th. I also teach Yoruba, which is a major indigenous language of Nigeria. And then I also teach Wolof, which is the major indigenous language of Senegal. And for Nigeria, let me say one of the 3 major indigenous languages of Nigeria. I don't want my Hausa and Igbo folk getting on me. But yeah, these are some of the initiatives that we have. And as far as quality of life, just to cap off on that point, my sister, she was 170 pounds and she's down to 130 right now. And she, you know, has a very active lifestyle. Whereas, you know, in DC, she was in DC before, you know, it's cold, you know, half the year, you just sitting up, you know, in your own apartment, eating, blah, blah. But here, just being here, because it's warm all the time, it lends itself to having an active lifestyle, you know, going out, seeing people. And I can say I really saw that between, like, growing up in the South, you know, North Carolina, and then living in Chicago, how just in general, in North Carolina, people are very warm because the atmosphere is warm. And my father, when he moved from Brooklyn, he was just like, you know, like you will see somebody who you don't even know, they just waving at you, hey, how you doing? How you doing? And he was like, man, are they plotting on me? What's going on here? Because in Brooklyn, people ain't just waving, hey, how you doing? How you doing? It's like, you know, you kind of just stay, you know, on your square. But that was that type of warmth that you just see from Black people in general, and it's like that here as well in Ghana. So you kind of see the personalities mimic the environment that people are in. Whereas in Chicago, you know, it's still Black people, but you just find like people are kind of like in their cave, right? It's like we're kind of, it's cold. So we're also kind of cold, we're kind of distant, you know, that type of deal. And it's like that generally, you know, in urban situations, as opposed to rural situations, but I would say more so you can see that reflection in the environment. So this is a place where, you know, we're Black people, we're African people. So we had been in this type of environment for millions and millions of years. If you go back to the oldest hominin fossil known Tumai of Chad, that, you know, we're kind of made for this type of environment. So you put us in a very cold, very dank, very, you know, dreary environment, then you start to see the personality. You see this, you know, psychologists talk about how that has an impact on in terms of depression and all these other things. So, you know, come to sunny Ghana, you will enjoy it if you haven't been here yet, you know, for the audience. And then also consider repatriating, you know, the major years of your life, instead of giving it to the white people who have enslaved us in the past and continue to enslave us through the prison system. Think about using those, you know, best years of your life to enrich people who look like you, your own people.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go and connect with the brother. We'll put the links in the pinned comment at the bottom, like we always do. That'll be the first one. You can click it and see what the brother have going on. So we appreciate you talking to us today about everything in Ghana, and you guys to stay blessed and keep away from Rona as much as possible, and you know, take care of the kids, because that's the future.
Definitely, definitely. And once again, I appreciate you having me on. You know, anytime I get an opportunity, I kind of try to do the Nana Harriet Tubman move, where, you know, people were on the plantation, and there's a quote that's ascribed to her, even though there's some controversy in terms of whether it was her quote. She said, I freed thousands, I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves, right? As we would say, enslaved Africans. But I think just the point of it is really something that we can drive home in terms of, you don't really realize what you're missing out on until you feel something else. And in the US, we're taught that this is the best place. There's nothing else. Even if there is anything else, it's not as good as here. But then once you go outside, once you live outside for some time, you start to taste other foods, you start to meet other people, you start to experience other environments. And then you start to be like, why in the world was I subjecting myself to that type of lifestyle, which is really a death style? So, you know, anytime I get a chance, you know, I'm open to share that message. Just, you know, try it out, you know, for people. Come to the motherland. This is a place where your ancestors are from. And, you know, once you experience that, you'll probably never want to go back.